Welcome to the Mindfulness Academy podcast. I'm your host, Amy Morgan. And on today's show, we have Jeb Banner. Hi, Jeb.
Hey, Amy. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you on the show. I'm going to tell the folks a little bit about you. He has a very interesting background, so listen up. Jeb Banner is an entrepreneur with a musician's soul, with the stated personal mission of creating meaningful work for talented people who share his desire to use business as a force for good in this world. Jeb has founded or invested in a number of businesses and nonprofits, including Smallbox, Springboard Marketing, The Speakeasy, Musical Family Tree, Joyful Noise Recordings, Gravy Lab, Boardable, Adproval, Ripley's Auctions, and Brain Twins. Most recently, he has served as CEO of OpenDate. He also serves or has served on many boards in the Indianapolis area for nonprofits. He lives in Indianapolis with his wife, Jenny, and their three beautiful daughters. In his spare time, if you have any, Jeb, he plays and records music, collects vinyl records, forages mushrooms, and cooks as much as possible. I must say that foraging mushrooms that's the first time we've had that in the podcast. You love, is there a certain one? I just kind of got to know that. Is there like how do you say it? Morel? Is that how you say that?
Oh yeah, morels. Morels are amazing. Yeah, that's the king of the mushroom, at least here, really kind of anywhere until you get to truffles, in Europe or West Coast. But chanterelles are I think underlooked mushroom that grows pretty plentifully here in the Midwest. And it's a beautiful mushroom. It's a yellow mushroom, yellow to orange. And that's one of my favorite mushrooms. And you'll find that in the summer in the right places by the pound. Whereas morels, you'll find by the piece. It's a lot harder to find morels than it is to find chanterelles. So that's part of my joy in hunting for chanterelles. The quantities are different.
So which is better for you, the hunt or the eating?
They're all the same. It's the experience of getting out in the woods. I've got some land down in Brown County, and we have a little solo stove set up there. So we'll hunt and then we'll cook meat and mushrooms and vegetables over the stove and eat them right there with some wine. It is there's times where you feel like you're a king, even though it's as simple as cooking in the woods. But that feels very, I don't know. That's why humans exist, I think, is to do something like that. So
feels extremely wholesome just to hear about it. I'm glad that you have that as a pastime. I always like to open with a little bit of how we met. You weren't just someone I bumped into on the street. We kind of have had a lot of mutual connections for a very long time, and your name has popped up in a number of places. I think first with Meg Liffick with Smallbox, delightful human being, and she mentioned you a few years ago. Yeah, she's wonderful.
She's awesome.
She spoke very highly of you and just said, "Hey, this is really what Jeb's all about too. I really think you should connect." And I put that in the back of my pocket and thought about it for a while. And then Kara O'Neill also mentioned you. You'd worked with her at Boardable, and has been part of the Good Aim team. And yeah, I thought, well, I think the universe is saying maybe we should really connect. So you kind of kept popping up in various places. So I'm wondering if you would tell us, so you love the woods, but you live in Indianapolis, more urban, or what's the situation? I'm curious where you grew up and kind of what's kind of a homey feeling for you.
Yeah, I grew up in South Bend on the south side, not far from the woods. Across the street, we had fields and woods, and a lot of woods nearby, trails and creeks. I've always felt drawn to nature, drawn to big trees. I built a tree fort in my backyard when I was, preteen to teen. So, as I got older, I often found myself pulled back into anytime I saw the woods, I just wanted to go tromping and exploring. So it's been something that's a big part of me my whole life. And as I got older, the opportunity to buy some land, my wife and I, Jenny, we were able to buy some land and they have a little kind of small park at your disposal, if you will. It's a great joy, and it's great to bring friends down there. I feel very peaceful in nature. I just feel sort of this spiritual sort of exhale when I get into the woods that is very nourishing to me. And right now it's a little hard to get in the woods. The weather's a little chilly. I just got a new hip back in November, so I'm not quite as sure-footed as I was before. So I'm really longing right now for the woods, and it's been a little challenging to go a few months without visiting my friends, if you will.
I like that a lot. I actually grew up in the woods. I mean, we had a house,
Mm,
right? But I mean, I grew up in the woods and I feel the same way. It just like I told a friend, it's like the manic inside of me takes a rest. It just everything
mm,
just feels so much calmer. It's all going to be okay. I just feel like all the trees are saying it's all going to be okay, Amy.
mm.
So I like hearing when other folks have that kind of experience. Um, what's your educational background? Because you have had a really robust career, and we'll talk about that too. But what about your educational background that led you on this path?
I wasn't much for education. That's not too surprising. A lot of entrepreneurs probably say that. But I had a really good high school experience. I went to this classical school in South Bend called Trinity School of Green Lawn. It's a small class, 9 guys. It's run by a bunch of kind of Christian hippies. Smoking pipe in the class, playing Bob Dylan. The songs to start off the class. A lot of like reading of everything from Marx to Plato to Dostoevsky. Really a wide range of dead white guys. And we really were encouraged to be creative and explore and to sort of embrace things that we weren't necessarily comfortable with. And that was very helpful for me, coming from a pretty evangelical Christian traditional household with great parents that also encouraged me to be creative and mentally explorative. But then I went to IU down in Bloomington, and I took my time. I spent 6 years in college. Part of that was for things going on with my family, but part of it was just I simply didn't really want to go into adulthood. I just kind of drug it out as long as I could. And went with the easiest degree I could find, which was an English degree. But my real degree was in music. I was playing music all the time. Worked at a record store. Worked at a rock club. I was living that life every day. But I wasn't destined to be a successful musician. At least it doesn't appear to be the case. And I eventually found that I was really good at organizing things and making things happen. And that entrepreneurial side of me started to kick in. And by the time I made my way to Indianapolis in the late 90s, I was finding myself really kind of almost accidentally starting a business in the eBay space, just because I bought a bunch of stuff and didn't know what else to do with it. So my education, if you think about education as sort of being both in the classroom and outside the classroom, I think outside the classroom was probably the more powerful education. And that's where a lot of my network comes from. And that music community still is a big part of my life. And it's expanded quite a bit since then.
That interesting soil from from which you come. I'd never heard of a school quite like that. Is it still around?
It is, yeah. It's still around. It's called a Great Books program. It's focused on classic literature. We spent 2 hours a day doing what's called humane letters, and then that's basically reading great books and discussing them, writing papers, and then 2 hours a day doing science, physics, math, and then we do drama, art, languages. I did Latin and French very poorly. I came across some scorecards recently, and it was like, you can tell that Jeb has a ability, but he seems to have absolutely no drive. It's like I had no drive. I had no desire whatsoever to get good grades. The whole experience was really frustrating to me. Only times I really, really enjoyed myself was those conversations around the literature. I love those classes. And everything else felt like a prison sentence to me. I couldn't sit still. I'm sure I had ADD or whatever, but it's like back then in the 80s, they weren't diagnosing such stuff. And that's probably okay. It just, I think, led to me being a little bit more creative in general. And life goes on.
Well, let's talk about this career path. And I have several questions around it, but we started with eBay. You're still up in South Bend, right? at that time.
Yeah.
And then tell me about this progression, because then at a certain point you got into marketing. Was that your first gig here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I mean, I started a business called Stuffy, which was basically selling stuff on eBay. I found myself helping out with websites. This is very early, like 2000. So the web was still very new. So I was just basically hacking together stuff. I was learning early search engine optimization, search engine marketing, email marketing. It was very, very early. So no one really knew what to do. It was sort of interesting space and time to be in. Google came out around then. I kind of just kept on learning things by doing things, which is how I learn. I'm an experimenter. I have to get my hands dirty. I'm not going to learn very well in a classroom. I will learn out in the world. And then after that business, it kind of evolved into a second business, which is Auction House, Ripley's Auctions, formerly Antique Helper. And that was really an accelerant for me. I had to, kind of take marketing to a new level, web design with my future business partner, Joe Downey. We started building database-driven websites. The first one being the Auction House database-driven website, which was at the time kind of a new thing, using these database structures like MySQL to power a website. So that was a new thing. And then that led to my first nonprofit, Musical Family Tree, which was, again, a database of, unreleased original Indiana music that I thought deserved more attention. And we built some really neat tools, playlist functionality, kind of like what you'd see in Spotify now, but, with a focus on Indiana underground music. And that was a big aha for me around the power of the internet to build product, if you will. So I didn't really know I was building product, but I was building product, and that led to Smallbox, which then became a web design shop. And we built product for all kinds of people all over the place. And we got into marketing, and we got into brand and strategy, and then we got into consulting. I did a lot of work around mission, vision, values, and that kind of stuff at Smallbox. I realized how important culture was to brand. So I started connecting a lot of dots and helping organizations, not just with their websites, but with the way they operated as a business. And that was sort of an aha for me that I'm continuing to make sense of, as I go through my journey.
Excellent. And you have been, so you were at Boardable for a while, kind of tech, and also OpenDate most recently. What kind of drew you to those? And then I have a follow-up question. So I'm gonna have you answer that one. I'll get to something I'm really curious about.
Yeah. Boardable was really just this sort of happy confluence of a number of things, including we had a customer at Smallbox, United Way of Central Indiana, and they came to us and said, "Hey, this is where Gravy Lab came about. We need a board portal. And this is what it used to do." We spec'd it out. It was a lot of money to build that just for them. They said, "Well, we don't really want to pay that much money just for ourselves." And we said, "Well, what if we built, a product that you subscribe to?" And they got more interested in that. And then at that point, I'd started the Speakeasy with Christian Anderson, Eric Tobias, Andy Clark, and some others. And I was a board chair, and I saw the problem of coordinating a board via email and attachments and just not having a system of record, So we took the leap. We built a product based upon, what we knew it needed to do. And that was sort of just a moment of alchemy that I think this happens with businesses. And I've seen a lot of businesses not get to that. And I have a lot of, sympathy for both sides, because I spent a good 12 years at Smallbox trying to knock on that door and not get through, building, tool after tool, trying to turn it into a product, all kinds of different solutions. And to see it finally click, I started to notice that there was a different dynamic at play when it clicked and when it didn't click. And happy to explore that. That's more of a product conversation. And then that really took us into the Boardable journey. And for a year, I was CEO of Boardable and of Smallbox. And then we raised money, and I transitioned out of Smallbox. My wife actually transitioned in as CEO for 2 years before Meg joined in 2020. So that was a really interesting season of, letting go of one thing, grabbing onto another, and having my wife kind of shore up the company I was leaving at Smallbox, which was not in great health at the time because I had been neglecting it. And I think to some degree I had been restless, and that restlessness had been hurting it for a while as I took it down a million different rabbit holes. It did fine. It recovered, and it's in great shape. Meg's doing a fantastic job, but I learned a lot of lessons during that season. And fortunately, my marriage also survived, so that's good too.
Happy ending. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
For those who don't know what the Speakeasy is, would you tell us what that is?
Yeah, the Speakeasy. Well, now I'd say it just closed recently. For 13 years, it was open. It was a co-working space in Midtown, South Broad Ripple. And it was the first co-working space in the state. We opened it in 2011. I remember it was the week of the Super Bowl here in town. It was a really kind of magical season for Indianapolis. It was a really special time for those of us that were around. And the Speakeasy was a love letter, as Christian Anderson put it, one of our partners, a love letter to the Indiana tech and entrepreneurial community, of a place to have them be able to come together, have meetups, work obviously during the day. And I'm really proud of what that organization did. It was a nonprofit, not a for-profit. And it became a hub for the tech community, and a lot of businesses came out of it, a lot of relationships, and even marriages and everything else you can imagine. And then, obviously the co-working scene took off, and over the last 13 years, there's co-working everywhere. And I think that to some degree, rising rents and everything, it became hard to maintain a nonprofit model like that without pricing out some of the members that we wanted to serve. I wasn't involved at the end. I stepped off the board, but I think the Speakeasy had a really big impact on the community, and I was honored to play part in that. I'd definitely say a career highlight for me to be working on a project like that with really great people.
That's neat. I didn't realize that was the first co-working space in Indiana. That is really special. I'm actually, the podcast studio right now is actually in a co-working space. So this is kind of next generation of some of that here in Fountain Square. The Switchboard. Yeah. It's a great space.
It's a great space.
Great people around. So I think that's a big part of it, which is what through the Speakeasy, who you're bringing together, the right types of folks to increase business and sometimes even relationships of various sorts. That's amazing. So the question that's been burning in my mind since we last spoke is, I'm a business owner, have owned Good Aim Communications for 12 and a half years at this point. When do you know as an entrepreneur, hey, it's time for someone else to take the reins? I'm not ready for that. So don't anybody come after me just yet. But when because it seems like you've made some calculated moves, and sometimes maybe you might have looked back even with Smallbox and said, man, maybe I should have done that a little bit differently earlier, or I don't know, somehow. How do you know?
Yeah, I think each time. So there's been 5 businesses at this point, and then nonprofits. And there's a similar situation with nonprofits where the founder needs to get off of the board. Otherwise, you get founder syndrome, and you start to kind of disfigure the organization. I think. That said, there's really great nonprofits that have founders that have been there since day one, and they're executive directors, and they're really vital organizations. So there's that dynamic too. That's more of a life commitment kind of relationship. I'm not really that kind of person when it comes to businesses. I'm more of a fire starter, and that's kind of the area that I excel at. I'm very good at the early stage of a business or nonprofit of putting together a team, figuring out product market fit, package and pricing, go to market, and essentially giving that momentum to the business to get it off the ground, put the plane in the air. I enjoy it when it's in the air, but I really love liftoff. I love liftoff when I'm in a plane too. I love that feeling of just, that sort of whoosh that comes over you as a business takes off. I love advising people that are doing it. I love being a part of it. And I've gotten to do it 5 times now with businesses, advise on probably 8 to 10. And it's really exciting to be a part of that journey. Um, with each time it was different. With small box, I outstayed my welcome. I think so. I was the CEO, or I had a partner in the business who was the chief technical officer. He became a co-founder of Boardable as well. And it's just I just kept on doing it. I didn't really. It was my safety raft. I stayed on it, and I kept on trying to find ways off. But I think in the end, I'm glad I stayed too long. It taught me about staying too long looks like, and the reasons not to stay too long. And when Boardable happened, I was really grateful for it. It gave me an off ramp that was, towards a different kind of experience, which was a product experience. I had done the service experience. I knew that world. I was fatigued by that. I was fatigued by the monthly, quarterly climb up the hill, and with billings and payroll and everything. And there was a real lightness of going into the product world, raising money, and knowing that you had runway to work on things, to experiment and innovate, and to find your product market fit, and to begin to scale the business, get to some level of repeatability. I just realized this really suits me. This suits me. I like this. I like to build the machine. Once the machine's built, I think I'm a good guy to transition to another leader that's better to sort of take that machine where it's going to go. And that's where the season I'm in right now with OpenDate, of transitioning the business. It's always bittersweet, having done this a few times. There's a lot of emotional elements to this. I think that emotional side is what stops people from doing it often, because it hurts. It hurts to love and care about people, and then to have to say, hey, I'm not going to see you every day. Doesn't mean you're not going to be in their lives. I've learned that through time. I still have lots of relationships with people like Kara that works for you. Great people, but I'm not seeing them every day. It's a different cadence, they're going off to college, or I'm going off to college, or whatever it is. I have kids at college right now. It's a different cadence, right? So that emotional side, I think, is partially what held me back in the past. I mean, it was scary, but I've gotten more confidence in it. I've gotten more comfort in being able to do that. I see the value in it. I understand where my strengths are. I understand where they're not. I'm a very good first stage CEO. I'm an okay second stage. I'm probably a mediocre third stage. I have this idea that if I had 1,000-person company, I'd probably be a good CEO, because I could go back to being more of a first stage leader and have somebody run the business underneath me and just kind of go around and do what I love to do. But that's a little bit of where I'm at in that journey. And I'm really in the middle of it right now. Like, this is the season of it. The last 2 weeks I've been transitioning out of my OpenDate role. And that's been an amazing 2-year run. It went a lot faster than the last one, which was exciting. And then handing the business off to Eric Tobias, who is one of the founders of the business and also the product leader since day one. I sometimes think, he gave me a baby. I'm giving him a toddler, kind of how it works. And he and I are great friends, and we have a lot of open communication around all this stuff. And I want nothing more than the success of that business. I'm excited to stay involved. And it's just, it's always emotional. It's an emotional season for me right now to say goodbye and then to kind of see what's next. And I'm making myself available to life to see what that looks like.
Ooh. How do you do that? How do you make yourself available to life?
Oof. Well, that's everything, right? That's getting up in the morning and meditating and praying and listening more and more to my body and less to my mind. Trying to discern, going through this change. I've had to listen to my body a lot. My body is often ahead of my head. It knows something before my brain, my intellect has figured it out. I've just come to realize my intellect is pretty limited in what it can do. It's really powerful, but it's got a limited scope, limited domain, if you will. And there's things that it just cannot get to. It cannot get to that sort of deeper discernment that the heart gets to. There's something beneath all of that I don't understand, but I experience, which is a deeper wisdom than the wisdom of my mind. And I'm trying to tune into that this next stage, and then filter it back through my intellect to make the plans and take the steps. But I've got a season here. Fortunately, they took good care of me. I've got a season to listen, and I'm grateful for that season. Um, and so I'm listening right now. I'm having a lot of conversations like this, and waiting. I think there's a power in waiting, and being patient, and not having the answers. I don't have the answers right now.
Sometimes a very magical place to be. It can feel really uncomfortable in my experience to be in that space, the in between, the almost, but not yet. I
Mm,
think I've heard it said in is it John O'Donohue, one of my favorite Celtic writers. I think he called it the liminal space.
mm-hmm.
I love
Liminal
that.
space. I was just talking about that with a friend this week. I am in a
Yeah.
liminal space right now. And I think to some degree, I've been in a liminal space a lot in the last few years, just on a spiritual level of just, there's always a shedding of skin that happens as you go deeper into that practice. And, there's a surrendering that happens in my experience in my opinion, surrendering to life, surrendering to love. Um, I've been trying to let go more and more as I go forward in this life, and to trust more upon what you might think of as a spirit-led approach, and less upon intellectual reasoning-based approach. Not that doesn't have a place. I certainly use it all the time, but it's such the default in our Western world to make all our decisions on a spreadsheet, if you will, spreadsheet in our mind, pros and cons list. And I've just had enough experiences to realize that there's the way of the mind and there's the way of the heart. And it's important to honor both of those.
This is a topic that has been brought up with some regularity, particularly around listening to the body. And
Mm-hmm.
um, that's big for me. That's actually in my journey to mindfulness was a huge part of being comfortable in that liminal space that I was in at the time when I entered the journey. And I would notice, and I'm curious what yours is, and I've had different folks answer this, and some of them are kind of interesting, what happens to them. But I notice if I have a lot of overwhelming feelings, like if I'm trying to gauge something, is this the right thing? If I start having this like kind of this flip in my stomach, or if my throat starts tightening, it's like my body is like, no.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's the right thing, I just feel this incredible calm,
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
honestly, this morning when I was meditating, I was thinking about, looking forward into the day and our conversation. And I felt that. I was like, this is going to be great. I felt a lot of
Mm-hmm.
peace about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering what happens to you. Would you mind sharing, like, when you're
Mm-hmm.
discerning things, what is your body saying? How does it talk to you?
Yeah, that's very similar. I think that there's a process I have to go through where I have to acknowledge the voice of fear, and I have to acknowledge the good role it plays in my life. Not just the distraction it creates, or the sort of obfuscation, if you will, of what's really happening. Fear is very good at running around my psyche and telling me stories that are scary or distracting. So I have to go through a cycle where I have to honor the voice of fear, listen to it, and kind of soothe it in a way, and say, "I hear you. I accept it. This is what you're, this is what fear, the part of me that has that voice, is saying." So there's a sort of calming of that I have to do to get to the deeper discernment and the subtle signals that come from my body and come from the parts of me that I don't fully understand how to articulate. That to me takes time. Recently I spent a good half an hour plus in meditation to even get to where I could really like discern those subtle signals. It's very easy to be overwhelmed with like mental head trash, fear converse, the stories of fear. And I think most people never get past that. I spent most of my life not getting past it and just being bounced around like a pinball, just constantly going between some head trash, which is usually fear stories, in the end, and never really feeling or seeing clearly what it was I was supposed to do, the way forward, not tuned in, if you will, to life's sort of, it's I just think of it as a whisper. There's a whisper out there, and the whisper isn't always like actually words, but it's like this sort of thing that comes up when you tune into that frequency. I do a meditation every morning about being an instrument of love, and being, I said, tune me, use me, play through me, let love flow through me and into the world. And I'd start my day with that, because to me, I can't go into the world, harmonize with others, play along, write my songs. I'm a musician, without being in tune. And I think that being in tune also allows me to pick up those more subtle vibrations. And I'm probably only picking up like a small fraction of them, because I'm still pretty, caught up in the cycles of fear and, all that stuff. I'm human, but I'm working to have increased compassion for myself as I go through these experiences, and to just know that progress is plenty. I don't need to compare myself to some sort of, guru or whatever it might be. That's not my journey right now. So yeah, I bounced around a little bit there, but I think that there's a lot of just waiting and then listening. And sometimes you got to keep doing that for a while.
It's true. I recently heard about a self-care method in which you get really clear about the prescription, if you will, for your own peace or your own joy. Sometimes when fear starts running rampant, you can forget, hey, you know what? I feel a lot of peace when I'm out in the woods, or I feel a lot of peace when I'm looking for some mushrooms, or I feel a lot of peace, and just having something at the ready to remind you if there's kind of a state of mind that you're like, this is how I kind of quiet the overwhelming fear, kind of as I would say, a partner to silence. There's a time for silence, and then there's sometimes there's a time for, just kind of taking care of yourself amidst all the voice. I appreciate you sharing that. I think liminal space is something I don't think I ever knew how to deal with before I started this journey. I think I just sprinted through life trying to get to the next thing. So it's taught me a lot about that space and the, the unformed possibility of life, and to just wonder in that place instead of being, sometimes it is scary for sure, but trying to hold space for it to be awesome and maybe way bigger and more amazing than I could ever possibly imagine, because I'm just holding my hands open to kind of see what happens.
Yeah. Birth takes time, it takes 9 months for a human to be gestated and born. And it takes a long time for us to get born and reborn and reborn. And I'm going through a cycle of that right now. And it's uncomfortable. There's days when I'm just like, oh, this is weird. It's like my feelings are all over the place. Sometimes I'm, kind of ecstatic. Some days I'm sad, So it's a really human experience to have happen. And I think that's part of why we're here, is we're here to have these experiences. We're here to be present with this kind of, if you will, deeper existence on the planet Earth, beyond survival. We get the privilege of having these experiences. Not everybody does. And I think that's part of a journey that we're built for as humans,
kind of a different perspective, kind of piggybacking on what you were saying. I kind of noticed sometimes even in my journey, as I was in that liminal space, some folks, I think, were really intrigued, and I don't want to say jealous. I don't want to put words into their mouths, but almost like, whoa, there's a lot of possibility here. And I can see that now as I go through and I see what you're going through. So it's almost like sometimes my own life, or perhaps in their instance, their lives are just kind of like, they're at this place where it's like you're expected to be X, Y, and Z, and it's X, Y, Z every single day. And then when you talk to somebody who's in that space of the in between, I don't know, something kind of inspiring, and there's kind of a spark. I don't know, just to provide a different perspective. That's kind of what I'm experiencing here. It's like, ooh, what's next, or what's right now? There's just different.
Do you feel like as a leader, I think also women sometimes have more expectations placed upon them by society, certainly in different roles. Do you feel like that makes it more challenging for you to live in that liminal space? In terms of being perceived by people as a leader, as
and a woman who's has kids and everything like that. The question is, do I feel like it makes it more difficult? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like to honor that liminal space. Do you feel like you have a lot of like sort of pressure to be pushed back into the container that was sort of being experienced previously?
I would say yes. I don't know if it has to do with me being a woman or just how I'm built, as a person. I feel like that may be even more so. Definitely feel a lot of pressure that probably I just put on myself to get up early, work out, do the meditation, go through, a long work day, roll in on 2 tires into the garage, and then instantly, without one single breath of break, it's like onto the, the dinner and the cleanup and that pressure. It feels like, here's the thing, Jeb. I've been going through the mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher training through Brown University. And I feel like the biggest reason I've wanted, not the only, but one big reason for me has been I've wanted the voice of a working mother, a business leader, female, to be in that space. I feel like it's been just like darn near impossible. It felt like it had been tons of like older, honestly, mostly white men here in the Western society. I know it's different in other countries, but I didn't feel like we had a voice there and a practical path to practice it. How do you do this when somebody's constantly knocking on the door? Where's my yogurt for lunch tomorrow? Or how to create that space in a way that's not just like one more thing, kind of felt like in some ways I fight this because when I talk with women who I know are leaders or business professionals or working multiple jobs, whatever it is, and they have a family life, I've almost felt reticent to talk about mindfulness in some ways, even though that's a major target audience. Business leaders and women are 2 huge audiences for me, but it felt like one more thing and frustrating to kind of be like the gospel of mindfulness. And it's like, when? That's kind of when
am I going to fit this in? Yeah. Thank you. I had a conversation with my wife related to this the other day. We're newly empty nesters. So this is a new experience for us. And we're kind of like waking up from the shock of, 23, 24 years of being hands-on parents, being present, being on demand. I think, for her, it's a very powerful awakening of like, okay, who am I outside of this context? And I'm hopeful that society, as it increases its awareness around, this dynamic, is just like women, particularly women that are in, really high pressure, roles like you, can have more space in their lives. Because I think that it's very hard for them to find that space when the demands of family are placed so, I think, disproportionately on their shoulders. And so, I'm thinking about this quite a just in my own journey and with my partner, with Jenny. It's like, how can I be supportive for her as she comes through this new season and comes into this new understanding of who she is outside of just being mom. And she's always, had a very full life, and she's been a CEO and all that stuff too. But I think, I know that it may be hard to fit it into that audience at times based on what, I understand that. But boy, I think all of society needs this. And I think that I think about it as like, I wish they taught meditation in kindergarten. I wish they taught it from the ground up, and every class started with it. And I wish it was something that just became the fabric of our culture, to be able to sit in silence and to breathe and to get centered, and to start our days that way and to end our days that way. And to, you asked earlier about like a meditation exercise. And the first thing that came to my mind was actually sitting in traffic, or standing in line, beyond the obvious, like sitting in the chair on the floor. I think that's where this stuff really, like, the rubber hits the road. And then you see peace beginning to, sort of come into our day-to-day lives. Whereas before we experienced so much disruption and stress. So jumping around a little bit, I think that the work that you're doing and wanting to do as you go forward is really important work. And it will change people's lives. It'll change their families. That's important work to do.
That's honestly been the mission from day one. I think in my heart, I've seen how practicing mindfulness has changed not only parts of me, but how I interact with others and how I lead. And the mission coming out from me is, I think it's a success. If one conversation goes differently out there in the world because somebody had a tool that they used, or they knew, hey, I can take a minute to breathe first. We talk about that a lot, those sliding door moments where it's a lot can change with one word or conversation. And whether that's in the office or that's at home, or on the phone somehow, that's just where it is for me. I just love the thought of spreading mindfulness in a way that it touches people and helps change relationships with ourselves, but also with others. I think that's the gift of it all. So I love this conversation, Jeb. We're having some good stuff right here. I'd like to talk a little bit more about your mindfulness practice. When I met with Meg Liffick many moons ago, it was probably not. I have a feeling it wasn't. It was probably around the time that all the transition was happening. I think it was maybe right before COVID, or maybe shortly after, still COVID-y time. So actually, I think we met a couple of times. So maybe a little before and a little after. I'm wondering how mindfulness has played a part in your work and client care. And then we'll talk a little bit more about kind of your morning routines. I love learning about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And staff care. That's another thing too. So how's it played out?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. To me, it's, every team meeting at OpenDate, I start with breath work, and just deep breaths, getting centered and calm. That's something that I introduced really early on. The first conversation I had with the team was around feelings and emotions. To me, like, being more mindful means tuning into those things that we often suppress and try to ignore, that I've come to see as being absolutely critical signals, not just for the person, but for the company. Of like, it doesn't feel good. There's a reason it doesn't feel good. Honor that reason. Try to take those emotions and feelings and let's build a story around them and explore that story. So I've talked to the team a lot around facts, feelings, and stories, and how they're different, how they're both important. They're all important. The facts are, objectively observed. Feelings are subjectively experienced. The stories are things that we tell ourselves to make sense of those two things. And, so often we confuse facts with stories. So mindfulness to me is to be able to be present with all three of those things, and to be able to understand them as being uniquely different and important, and to be able to talk about, hey, I know the numbers make sense here, but I don't feel good about this, and I don't know why. I just want to take a moment and say something feels off. Or sometimes if I say something in a conversation, I don't feel good about it afterwards. I'm like, I don't know why I don't feel good. I just feel like I said something. I'm sorry. I feel like I was off there. I feel like I was I'll be able to articulate. I feel like I was making it about me or whatever it might be, I think I was kind of unloading my stuff on you. That's not what I want to do. I'm sorry. To me, that's kind of the day-to-day practice of it, of just being present with what's going on inside of us and modeling that and encouraging it. And then we read through books. Probably the most consequential book was the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which is really a powerful book. I've read it a couple times. We went through it chapter by chapter as a team. And I think the team would say that was probably the most life-changing book that we read. We read some really good ones. But it just pushed you to operate at a level of like presence and responsibility in terms of like, this is what's happening. This is my role in it, and not to run away and to get into talks about the drama triangle of being the hero, the victim, the villain. So day to day, there's a lot of little things. It sort of infuses the culture of a business when you practice it, and it's part of the language of the business. And then that shared language gives everybody a way to communicate where they understand sort of the shorthand of what's going on. But, on a personal level, it's something where I feel like, again, I have to come into each day tuned and ready to be that leader, to be that person that can be the calm in the storm of the business. And if I'm not the calm in the storm of the business, the whole thing's going to start falling apart. I've seen that happen. I'm happy to share more about that, but that's a big part of my personal practice. Is I feel like I owe the team, the customers, the shareholders, whatever business I'm in, I want to be the calm in the storm, because otherwise things are just going to get completely chaotic, and there'll be absolutely no way to tell what's really going on, and the culture will get toxic, and everything gets wobbly.
Like that. I do notice a difference if it's a harried morning and I don't really get a chance for the for the seat, so to speak. I try even on those mornings to just say, you know what? We're just going to sit here, even if it's just for a minute or two, just get the mind together with the body for a moment before we go out into the world. So I like what you're saying here. I'm wondering what sorts of, you talked about breath work. You've talked about being silent. Visualization is another thing that we've talked about. You doing, I think maybe that was in another conversation, but I'm wondering, what's one of your favorite practices, kind of your go-to in the morning, maybe even during this time of in between? What's being useful for you right now?
Yeah, I have I guess at this point, pretty defined toolkit of techniques, and a lot of them are in the realm of chanting and vibrational meditations. I respond well to vibrational meditation. I think that's partially because I'm an auditory musical guy, but I just find like it just sort of just gives me this sort of alignment through my chakras, my spine, my body, that just makes me feel very centered and sort of like a chiropractic adjustment to my spirit, if you will. So I start every morning just in the seat, and I'll do, and I guess I'll just share a little bit of this, if that's okay.
Please.
So I'll start and I'll just get relaxed. And then I'll just do for quite a while. Just basically kind of going from there. And then I'll move around frequencies until I kind of like find the energy in me that needs to be released. So I might go up to And sometimes when I feel like a lot of sort of dissonance in me, I'll do more vibrational with my lips, which kind of helps, kind of just feels like it takes the noise out of my body. It's like, so I'll alternate different techniques. And that usually goes on 15, 20 minutes just kind of tuning my body. And I find that it helps to place my attention on my lips and the vibration of the lips. And I can kind of use my mind and my lips to sort of lock in. I still have plenty of like stuff floating by, lots of thoughts. I've been doing this meditating for about 10 years, but just for anybody that's getting started and you're frustrated about, the brain still chatting away. It's like, hey, that's the brain. Like I've come more to like have compassion for the brain and I'm not my thoughts. That was sort of a big aha for me is I'm not my thoughts. I'm experiencing my thoughts. My thoughts have something to tell me, but I am not my thoughts. And that it seems simple, but that's a big shift. And it took me a while to have that shift. So I'll do that for a while. I'll usually do the sort of mantra of I'm an instrument of love. Tune me, use me, play through me, let love flow through me and into the world. Usually 3 times. Then sometimes I'll pick a card from a deck, sort of a divination exercise. I like the Rumi deck a lot right now. It's been very helpful during this, kind of season of surrender that I'm in. And then I'll go and do some yoga. And I'll often continue chanting through the yoga, doing child's pose, different stretches, some sit-ups, things like that. With my hip, I'm just now getting back to where I can do more of a full morning yoga routine. That's my morning. And then during the day, I'll sometimes stop and just breathe and just try to just recenter. And like I said earlier, I find traffic and standing in line at Starbucks, whatever it is really great places to do breathing exercises and just to be present. And or I'll ride my bike around the neighborhood in the nice weather and I'll just breathe and I'll meditate. Peace be with you to everyone I pass. I think there's a way to bring peace into the world. I think this world's hungry for peace. I'll try to smile at everybody I see. Talk to people I don't know. I just feel called to be like this ambassador for peace. And it's kind of a weird dynamic also being like a really kind of ambitious, capitalist too, who wants to build things and put together teams. But I think you can do it. I think you can do both. I really do. I think you can live in peace and still go out there and play the game all out. I think that's actually the best way to play it. At night, I do a deeper meditation usually, and usually a little more yoga and some reading. Depends on the night. The night's a little more erratic. The morning's more consistent. Usually I do cardio at night now that I'm getting back to health. Not every night. That can be more like 45 minutes to an hour at night. And that's a good successful day when all that happens.
When you first were talking about the frequencies, I instantly my brain instantly jumped to kind of listening to, what do they call it? Like the hertz, how you have certain hertz that are for, maybe it's like peace or, visualization or whatever it might be. So I'm curious. It's really fascinating to me. You're the first person on the show who's talked about, tuning the body through not only listening to sounds, but creating the sound. So I thought that was kind of a unique twist. I didn't know that about you. It's very interesting. And I love that harmony that you're creating between your body and your mind and just life. You talked about this mantra you say in the morning, and then you live it through your practice. And so I think the embodiment of it through your practice it's really cool. So thank you for sharing that. Did you just kind of come up with that, the kind of like trial and error on your own? Is that, or did you learn that from someone? Okay.
It was a combination. I definitely am aware of people, who do chants and things like that. But every summer I do a week up in the woods, this cabin in Michigan. And I've had some experiences there where it just felt like this teacher was kind of like with me. I'm just spending days meditating and making music, and sort of being guided a little bit around, try this. Kind of like, I'm experimental. I'm very experimental. It's how I learn. That's how I build businesses and everything else. So I'm always experimenting with everything I'm doing. And I started playing around with different sounds and vibrations, and just trying to just being present in my body and feeling them. And I just felt this deep, like soothing feeling, like the soothing feeling coming from it. And I began to see like it was doing some really interesting things to my being, and so I've been probably practicing that way now for, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. And it's a little bit like challenging at times because it's like, it's a little noisy. So
So if your wife is like, you okay in there?
she knows, but yeah. There's a lot of other little things I've learned, just like things with my hands, my body, of just kind of how to kind of activate and release things. There's, I'll do Wim Hof breathing sometimes when I feel like I really need to go deeper and kind of shock the system a little bit. There's lots of little different techniques. I think the key is figure out what works for you. Don't get into any sort of orthodoxy around this stuff. It's not meant to be that way. It's meant to be a tool for you as a human to live a more peaceful, joyful, present life. And when you do that, you'll find that your life around you starts to become less chaotic. And, generally, I mean, external chaos always happens, but the calm in the storm remains, and that's something that I am, I would say, protective of at this point. I don't want to lose that.
I'm wondering if there's any part of this that you would be willing to lead us in, even just a minute or two, that we could practice something maybe a little different than what we normally do. Am I going to be chanting in this podcast? I mean, there's a first for everything, right?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a question for you to answer in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm happy to. Would you be interested in trying this yourself?
Sure. Let's do it.
It's a little hard for two people to do it at once. I've tried this a little bit because we're going to end up on different frequencies, and you might feel pressured to pull to a frequency. But I'll start, and then I'll hand off to you, and you can try it a little bit. And if none of this works, you just edit it out, right?
Sounds great.
It's the way it goes, right? So just get straight and relax. Normal stuff. It's kind of breathing. I always breathe through my nose, out through my mouth. Longer out than in. After another one of those, I'll start. We're going to try it now. You want to breathe in deeply through the nose and out through the mouth. Just vibrate whatever way makes sense to you, and just tune into the vibration. Um, um, change the frequencies to find different places in you that might want to be loosened up, almost like an internal massage. Okay, let's sample.
Did a little differently that last time, kind of breathing out through the lips. I don't know exactly how you do that thing with your lips, but I gave it my best
Mm-hmm.
try.
Yeah. It like when I really get into it, I'm too self-conscious right now. I think in a way to like really like release my,
Same.
like, so it's, a little challenging, but, it can be a good, 30-40 second exhale, just like this really nice vibration that just kind of just runs through my body. And, um, yeah, it's a technique that I really enjoy and sort of accelerates the drop in, if you will, for me.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna have to add that.
everybody's got their own stuff.
I liked how, I mean, you could just feel the own vibration, even like down to your fingers in different areas. So I see what you're talking about, kind of the chiropractic benefits of that. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was the first time. I liked that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, one thing I do like to ask folks is, and you might have answered this. So if you did, maybe reiterating your definition of mindfulness. You talked about maybe those three components, like maybe the thoughts, the stories, but then kind of the real situation. I don't know if that's your definition or if maybe if it's something else.
Yeah, I guess I don't. I guess I don't think about the definition very often. So let me see what comes up. I think about it's the act and practice of presence, of just being present with what is, and for me, increasingly, it's acceptance and surrender to what is, of not trying to control and impose upon what is happening. As much as dance with it, to dance with life. Um, yeah, I think dancing with life is a lot more fun than fighting life. I've spent a lot of my life fighting what was, what was happening. So I think to me, when I think about mindfulness, it's just the act of practicing and maintaining presence, which is constant. I'm constantly falling off the horse, like all the time. So it's getting back up on the horse. And there's a cycle I practice of acceptance, forgiveness, and compassion. Acceptance of what happened. I fell off the horse. I forgive myself for falling off the horse. I have compassion for the human that fell off the horse, which is myself. Or somebody did something to hurt me. I accept that they hurt me. I forgive them for hurting me. I have compassion for them because they probably didn't know they were hurting me or they didn't mean to hurt me. That's like a cycle I run a lot, and it's very helpful for me.
Practicing of presence with the dog. Is that what you're doing right now? It's like,
Yeah,
it's my turn with you, Jeb.
Yeah.
It sounds like I should probably let you get to him.
Yeah.
Her? Is it a him or her?
A him and a her. They're both very excited right now, so I'm not sure what's going on.
That's all right. As we kind of wrap up here, I wonder if there's anything you want to promote that's going on right now. I think you still do quite a bit of musical performances or services, the musical family tree? Is that still a thing, or is there something else you want to talk about before we wrap up here?
Yeah, musical family tree is very much a thing. I've rejoined the board. I'm the board chair. We're revitalizing a lot of things the organization's doing. We had our 20th anniversary last year, had a festival down in Bloomington, which was amazing. And make music all the time. I'm working on music tonight with some friends, including some good folks in the tech scene here, Max Yoder, Matt Hunkler, my buddy Andy. Got another great musician, Michelle, staying with me right now. It's just like a through line through all my life is music. I'm always working on music. I got a studio here in town, and I go there every Tuesday night to make music. And then got a few bands I play with, not out live, because I find that playing live like slows down like the creation of music, because then you have to practice and learn songs, and that's not as much my style. I like to just make new stuff all the time. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it's core to who I am. It was my first love, that's my first love. And it's a real joy to share it with other people.
That's great. I didn't know that Matt was part of your musical posse. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. We have a group called Immediate Orchestra with Matt, Max, and a couple other friends. It's a great little improv, musical jam band, basically.
Yeah. I've been watching his career for a very long time. That's cool that you all are connected. Before we wrap this up, I was wondering if you'd do me one favor. I'm wondering if you would, since I chanted with you, so no pressure, but actually it's a little pressure. I'm wondering if you would practice one thing that I do on a daily basis, which is the Glowly Daily Reflection Practice. And I'm curious, about your answers, particularly because of where you are right now. So it's an acronym for what you're grateful for, what you lift up, things that need resources for self or others, something you observe either now or just kind of in general. Your wholesome intention could be for today, this moment, your life, and the why is for you are one positive thing that you say about yourself before you disband. So I'm wondering what you're grateful for right now, Jeb.
A long list. I'm really grateful for my wife to have a partner that's on this journey with me, that she's on her own journey, and she is just like kind of going through this wonderful chrysalis kind of moment of life, and the conversations we have are getting deeper and richer. I'm so grateful for her. I'm so grateful for the friends I have in my life, the ones I'll be with tonight. I'm grateful to have parents that brought me into this world and gave me so much of the foundation that I'm still building on. I've come to see all of my life as a gift. Let's start to reduce anything in my life and start to take pride in it and kind of pull back the layers. I'm like, oh, that was a gift. That's not really me. Anything I can say, I should be prideful. Oh, I did this. I made this. I built this. Well, but no, you were given all these things. So I appreciate that question, because there's a lot to be grateful for.
Beautiful. What's something you lift up right now?
Honestly, I lift up myself. I'm going through, a season of discernment and trying to understand myself. But also, I have a friend staying with me whose father just passed away. So I lift up her, she's a dear, dear friend. And I lost my father back in 2017. So I understand what it's like to go through this season.
What's something you observe?
I observe my dogs barking at the people stacking wood in the front of my house. I'll be more serious, but I think I observe that I am self-medicating a little bit right now. Just noticing that, like, I'm more likely to have a drink in the last few days. Just like, I'm definitely, got a lot of feelings and emotions. I'm sensitive to them, and my body's still healing from the hip. And so I'm a little more on the self-medicating side, and that's something that I'm just observing and trying to trying to make sure I stay in balance on.
Sure. Sure. What's your wholesome intention?
Mm. I Yeah, today is my buddy Max's birthday, and I'm hosting his little get together tonight. And I'm just looking forward to just having this beautiful time celebrating him. And I love him. He's such a dear person to me. So I have a very wholesome intention to have a really wonderful time tonight.
Good. And the last one is you are. So you get to say something lovely about yourself. So Jeb, you are.
I've been told a lot recently by people how they perceive me, because when you leave a business, that happens. You get a lot of nice, well, hopefully not always, I guess, but people say nice things. So it's been really interesting to listen to that and to take it in and to accept it and to not resist it. Because this inclination is sort of like, oh no, but I'm a great leader. Just honestly, I just think I just have a knack for it. And I think that was a gift. My father was a leader. I think that it was a gift given to me through my family and through the people I knew along the way, the mentors I had. I have a real heart for people. I love working with people. And when I work with people, I love those people. I'm not afraid to love people at work. I'm not afraid to bring love to work, and so I think I'm a solid heart-centered leader. I'll put it that way.
It's wonderful. Jeb, it has been so good to talk to you. It's been a delightful conversation, and I lift up that your hip heals very well, and you guys have a great time celebrating, performing, just living in this space. And it's really inspiring to hear what you're doing right now. And I wish you all the best in this moment. And if there's anything I can do in between or on the flip side, once you have figured it out, the door's open. So I appreciate your time very much.
Yeah, this has been great. I really got a lot from this conversation. I appreciate you doing this too. The world needs more of this.
Thank you so much for that. Well, from my heart to yours, may you live with ease. This is your host, Amy Morgan, signing off. Today's podcast is sponsored by Good Aim Communications. Good Aim Communications is a full-service marketing agency, and you can learn more about them at goodaimcommunications.com.